Lew Migliore is with us this morning. He is the industry's troubleshooter. He heads the organization LGM and Associates Technical Flooring Services. Much too long a name, I keep telling him, but Lew, how you doing?
LGM is fine. I'm doing great, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing
I'm
well.
impressed that you remember the name, though.
So am I.
Took you a long time to get it right, but
I'm impressed that anybody remembers that. And Lew comes on the program, and he brings specific problems that he's called out on, and we discuss them, and some of them are off the wall. This is an interesting problem.
Some of them are even worth discussing.
Some of them are. One or two, maybe. We've talked about concrete.
Cheap entertainment, Dave. They can't complain about it. It's cheap entertainment. If nothing else.
Cheap. We are very cheap.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We couldn't work any cheaper than we're working when we're doing this.
That's true. That's true.
Go ahead. Continue on, Dave. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Do you remember where you were?
I do.
Good.
Lew, we've talked about concrete a whole slew at times over the years.
We have.
And this is sort of a nuance to that we've not talked about, and this has to do with fly ash, which is a waste product from producing electricity. And that, I know they're trying to find uses for that. I think carpet is one of them, or at least...
not carpet, no.
Well, I mean, using that in various stages of producing elements of carpet.
Yeah.
And they're also evidently putting that in concrete.
Yes.
And there's also other products that they're putting in concrete, which potentially cause problems with adhesives when one is putting floor coverings.
Yes. The fly ash issue has just escalated because now fly ash has been a component that's gone into concrete. That's one of the places that they found that, because fly ash is difficult to get rid of and difficult to find uses for. Putting it in concrete, they found that it actually strengthens the concrete, it binds it up to a certain extent. When you get up to about 40% fly ash content in the concrete, it starts to create issues of sticking things to the surface of the concrete, those things being flooring materials, which are typically glued to concrete.
It won't stick to it if there's over 40%.
Yes. Now, just recently, they have, the American Fly Ash Association and the concrete industry have allowed or come to some agreement where more fly ash can go into the concrete, which was a celebrated event for them.
I know, I celebrated.
Well, it was, euphoric.
Yeah. We were dancing in the streets.
And there were beads and all kinds of things.
That's right.
I knew that you were involved in that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that being said, Dave, the fly ash content, and just kind of hold it in, when we get beyond 40% and go up to 60%, the likelihood of anything bonding to that, sticking to it, are you going to be okay? I see that would you want to get it out of your system now? Is it all right?
Go ahead, Lew. Go ahead.
Because it's making it very difficult for me to seriously discuss this with you having that I just swallowed the canary look at your face. And we've gotten away with this for how many years? 26? Who wants to retire? There's no sense of retire. We're having too much fun. It gets worse.
What
would be the point?
Yes, that's true.
Anyhow,
So
where was I? I was at 60%.
Once
you get above a certain point, 40%, now increasing to upwards of 60%, the likelihood of you sticking anything to that floor becomes highly suspect.
Yeah.
Remote, thank you. I'm glad when you throw these words in that I'm searching for. Very remote. So now when there's
we could do charades here.
Yes, we could. And who knows, as a flooring contractor, how much fly ash there is in the concrete? Yeah. Is that something that the guy's going to ask? I mean, no one thinks to ask that. They don't know anything that's going on there. So when there's a failure, somebody putting the flooring down is going to get blamed, because that's where the compromise is going to manifest itself visibly. The other thing is, and this one is really interesting, mesh or fiber used in concrete to strengthen it. And sometimes...
This is recycled fiber?
Yeah, yes, yeah. it's a mesh or it's carpet fiber or
So
whatever.
it helps knit the
Yes,
concrete together.
it does. It does. Now, if it comes to the surface, or if you grind the surface down because you got a moisture issue, this material is going to be exposed. It can be exposed naturally from coming up, and if you see that, it's very difficult, especially if you got to grind or bead blast the concrete. You're exposing this material, and it will create issues of bonding things to it. And the only way to get it off, and one of my guys was just at the World of Concrete, and he talked to 12 people. He says, so what do we do about this? And nobody really had an answer other than the fact that you burn it off. Well,
Burn it off.
yeah, burn it off. You have to burn it out of the concrete.
Burn the fiber off what would be the exposed part of it.
Correct. Now, you're going to do that in an occupied space prior to, especially if you're doing some work in an existing space and there's other space around you. You're going to bring open flame in there and melt this stuff off. And
It would seem like the contractor is certainly not going to buy concrete that has, this in it. If that's going to be a problem,
Well,
he's going to have to mitigate
Yeah,
it.
but if there's a moisture problem and they got to mitigate it, he's got no choice but to grind that concrete down. Especially if, now there's going to be alternatives to this in the future, and we'll talk about that at some later point when we've got all that buttoned up. But if you've got to mitigate that and you're bead blasting it and you're taking that down, you're going to expose this stuff, and you need to get rid of it because you got to put something over the top of it too.
Okay. So you can, with the mesh, you can see that. You can
Yes,
see that.
you'll be able to see it.
Now the fly ash, I don't imagine you can see that.
No, fly ash you're not going to see. I mean, you're going to have real slick concrete, but you're not going to see the fly ash. It's going to be mixed in.
Yeah.
Would
it look different? Is there a way you can look at it and say there's a high content?
I don't know. I don't know. I would imagine that it would have a dark coloration to it simply because that's what the stuff is. It's burned. It's the residue from burned coal is what it is.
So then, no doubt, there's going to be claims filed, and somebody's going to be able to check the fly ash content of concrete, and that's going to be the problem.
You could, if anybody knows that that's what they need to look for.
So then, I guess then the next thing is to have some sort of product that can be put on the face of this to mitigate that problem.
Correct, but anything that you put down as a primer might not stick to it either.
Yeah.
Because if the glue's not going to stick, you're not going to find much that'll stick to it. Now, there are things that, as I said, there are some alternatives that will work. But unless you know that you have those, then there's nothing you can do to address that until after you've got a problem. And the first thing that's going to happen is the flooring guys are going to get blamed for something that the concrete people have done, but the flooring guy knows nothing about.
What, I don't know that you know the answer to this, but putting this higher content of fly ash into concrete, is that a recent development?
No, it's not recent. They've been doing it for a while, not for a long time. Now, I'm giving you an answer to the best of my knowledge. Mm-hmm. It is something that we've become aware of over the last several years, but the increase in the fly ash going into the concrete is just recent.
Really recent.
I think that was within the last couple of months that I saw that.
Okay, so that's something.
And I'll go back and research it some more so that I've got.
Well, that's something we will no doubt revisit because claims no doubt will result.
Well, it's getting more challenging as we do things, especially with everybody trying to be green, meeting LEED qualifications. The more recycled content you have, the industry, the carpet industry in particular, with recycled content in the backing of carpet tiles, it created havoc for them. It cost the industry hundreds of millions of dollars, and so much so that they've backed away from it, and we're looking at alternative materials that are going to work, some of which we have been involved in their development. But you explore this territory, and it's uncharted waters, and you think you're doing everything good, and the next thing you know, it comes back and reacts in a way that you never expected it to. And that's the same thing with what we've talked about here, is that there's no history of any of this stuff having been done to know what effects it's going to have on on our industry, the floor covering industry. And then when it has an adverse effect, the first ones they look at are the flooring people, who had no knowledge, no idea, no nothing, but they're implicated because their product is the one that's failing. So if your product is failing or your installation is failing, it must be the installer, or it must be the glue, or it must be the flooring material, because it's nothing that we did, it's concrete. Now, it's not just concrete either. It could be OSB or particle board that you could be installing. And I had a lawsuit case a few years ago where everybody said it was one thing, and I finally, when I got involved in it, I went down and looked at it. I says, you know, you guys, you're going through all of this replacement, and this is not what the problem is. Was there an installation problem? Yes, there was. But the real problem was that the substrate was OSB, oriented strand board, which is held together with resinous materials and things like that. If you don't seal that before you install, the adhesive will react with the binders in that wood, because the wood's going to absorb it, and the chemistry is going to come out, and it's going to compromise the adhesive, and it's going to cause it to fail.
And the product was coming up.
And the product is coming off the floor. I've seen this in several locations where, in some government buildings, where they had, and these were HUD buildings, on grade, tile installed on the concrete, same people, same adhesive, everything. You couldn't budget with a jackhammer. But yet, on the upper floors that had particle board, the tile was just popping up, and the adhesive had turned to a crystalline look. It had a shiny look to it. And that's a chemical reaction between the wood and the adhesive. And nobody gives any of that any consideration. So what happens there, in this case, and these were several complexes of buildings, the flooring contractor gets blamed because he's done something wrong. Well, what's the difference between what he did on the on grade with the same adhesives and everything else, same installers doing everything, and the other floors with the wood substrates where he had a failure? And it turned out that that's what it is, and it's still we see that. So people, you can't just say it's concrete. There's issues when you're starting, when you're using OSB or particle board. There's issues there too. That's an easy fix. All you got to do is put latex milk down on that, and you can go down on it, and you're pretty much good to go.
Well, I guess flooring contractors are going to have to be a lot more aware of what it is they're putting their products down on going forward.
They are.
Just to escape expensive problems.
Yeah, they are. They're going to have to be, not only do they have to be aware of the products that they're working with, and there's so many new things coming out, they're going to have to be aware of the conditions which exist onto which they're installing the material, because they may do everything right relative to installing that material and not realize that they're in jeopardy because they've got an existing condition that they know nothing about that'll compromise all of their good work.
I hear you. Lou, I appreciate you bringing this.
You're welcome, Dave. My pleasure.
And I guess we'll be revisiting this.
I'm sure that we will.
Very good. We've been talking with Lew Migliore. He is the industry's troubleshooter. He has LGM and Associates Technical Flooring Services. And this is Top Floor TV.